Welcome and thank you for joining today's overview of USDA Public Communications Policy ARMAR Exercise Briefing. Please note that all participant lines will be muted until the Q&A portion of the call. We will provide you with instructions on how to ask a verbal question at that time. You are welcome to submit written questions during the presentation, and these will be addressed during Q&A. To send a note, select All Panelists on the Send To drop-down menu of the chat panel located on the lower right-hand side of your screen. With that, I'll turn the call over to Liz Clark. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Liz Clark with Professional Development Services Branch, and I'd also like to welcome you to the webinar today. We have two speakers for today's webinar. First, we have Joelle Hayden. Joelle is a Public Affairs Specialist for USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. Joelle began her APHIS career supporting the now-defunct National Animal Identification System and spent much of the past 11 years covering veterinary services issues, though she has supported all APHIS programs at one time or another. Joelle is an integral part of APHIS's risk communications and media training efforts. She was also a key member of the core HPAI response team that received a Secretary's Honor Award. Our second speaker is Ed Curlett. Ed is the Director of Public Affairs for USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. Ed has worked in APHIS Public Affairs for 25 years and has served as Director for 13 years. In his role, he led communications for many high-profile agricultural issues such as avian influenza, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, exotic Newcastle disease, citrus greening, biotechnology regulation, wildlife damage management, and numerous more animal and plant health issues. Ed encourages positive communication among his staff and with subject matter experts, as well as working closely and networking with state counterparts to ensure communications are consistent and coordinated. I'm now going to turn the webinar over to Ed.
Hello, everybody. This is Ed. I think I know probably a good portion of the folks on this call, and if I don't know you, welcome. This FMV drill that that's going to happen here in several weeks is a very important event here at USDA, and it's a very important event for APHIS and USDA communications. Before I turn it over to Joelle to talk about USDA communications policy in an emergency, I just wanted to mention that it would be no surprise that we adhere to the incident command system at USDA. And through that system, we depend heavily on collaborating with the states and with our industry partner on messaging and getting that messaging to the right people in a timely fashion in an outbreak situation. Accurate information is going to be at a premium. Timing is going to be very important, and coordination is also going to be extremely important in any emergency. So I just wanted to welcome all of you officially and turn it over to Joelle to get into some specifics about USDA communications policy. This isn't APHIS communications policy. This is departmental level policy. And should we have FMD, many of the communications calls will be coming straight from the Secretary's office, and then we'll be collaborating, coordinating with our state and industry partners on that. So, Joelle, if you can take it from here.
Okay, thanks, Ed. All right, and you can see a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today on your screens. This is the same overview that was in the meeting notices. And when Liz sent out the reminder earlier today or yesterday, there was an attachment. It is an internal guidance sheet I want to highlight for you. This is something we provide to our APHIS emergency responders as they deploy. As the new resource we've recently developed, it provides a basic overview of how we expect them to represent USDA to the best of their ability when on deployment. Now, because ARMAR is only an exercise, we will not be deploying to the field, but we felt it was really important to share this resource, especially with our own folks on the line, but also so that everyone else is aware of the guidance we provide to our folks. Now, if your own agency or group offers guidance, please go ahead and follow their guidelines. So let's get started. Communicating with the public during a disease outbreak is absolutely essential. And there's a science behind communicating in a high-risk or high-concern environment. This is called risk communication. And an FMV outbreak would definitely be considered a high-concern event. So one of the most important things we want folks to remember about risk communication is that people's perception equals their reality. And when people are upset, they have trouble processing information. It can actually be reduced by up to 80%. So that's the science content here for you folks on the line who are of a science background. There's actually research to prove all of these points, and we want to make sure you know that it's really important to consider communications. You have to communicate carefully and thoughtfully. Anyone involved in the incident should have one short, simple statement about the incident and your role in it ready to use. Now, a couple points to keep in mind, because what you say and how you say it are very important. And you want to make sure that your message is not only received but understood. I'll highlight these points. Use short messages and plain language. Plain language is a really important piece of the puzzle. This is a departmental and government-wide objective, and it's been really stressed. So you will see anything that we do publicly will follow plain language principles, and we encourage anyone who's working with us to do the same. Have no more than 3 key points and repeat them. Repetition helps folks remember. Use the appropriate nonverbals and appropriate visual aids. Avoid negative language and never speculate. It is okay to say, I don't know that answer. You need to align with credible sources. And the last one is probably the most important. Show empathy for the situation. You need to convince them that you care. Why? Well, I'll show you. Look at these 2 pie charts. The rules for effective communications change during high stress or crisis situations. You can see how the graph changes dramatically. In a low risk, people want to know that you're an expert. In a high risk situation, facts aren't going to cut it. People need to know that you care before they care what you know. I'll repeat that because we think it's very important to keep in mind. People need to know that you care before they care what you know. So when talking to affected producers, other stakeholders, or the general public during any sort of crisis situation, keep this in mind. Lead with empathy, and they are more likely to pay attention to what you have to tell them. And again, remember to keep your message short and simple to start. Some folks may need or require more detail, and you can add that at a higher level, but always start out with empathy and a simple, basic message. We don't want to overwhelm them up front. Our goal during ARMAR is to ensure message consistency. Now, that doesn't mean everyone has to say the exact same thing. But we know from the science we just discussed that repetition is a good thing in a crisis. So having everyone speaking from the same basic script will help drive our messages across to the public. With that being said, we all need to stay in our own lanes. Each organization should adapt their script to focus on their role and their expertise. And as Ed mentioned, coordination is also very important. Remember that we need to align with credible sources. So if we know what other groups are planning to say, we can support those statements and we can serve as each other's credible sources. USDA does have resources available. You can check out our FMD page, and this is the basic FMD webpage, not FAD Prep, but the basic FMD page at www.aphis.usda.gov/animal-disease-information/FMD, or go to the Animal Disease Information page and click on FMD. We have message maps that we've developed and fact sheets as well. The fact sheets are publicly accessible. The message maps we are still updating and finalizing to clear, And when they are, we will share them closer to the exercise date with the key communications contacts. So now let's get into the nuts and bolts. You guys probably have heard the term JIC, Joint Information Center. USDA will activate its own JIC whenever we confirm a foreign animal disease in the United States. We house the JIC in public affairs, but as Ed mentioned before, we are very closely aligned with the Office of Communication. We also work with our own deployed public information officers as well as the state public information officers. During the initial stages of a disease outbreak, we will support communications efforts out of public affairs. When a USDA incident management team deploys, if the PIO goes with them, then we will add those PIOs to the JIC. The PIOs do not always deploy. It depends on whether the state requests them or not, but if they go, they are part of the JIC. And we work closely with each affected state's lead PIO to coordinate messaging. We automatically begin this partnership as soon as there's a presumptive positive result from a non-lab waiting for NBSL confirmation. And we will continue to work with the state PIOs and or state JIC throughout the response. But state PIOs on the line, please know you can feel comfortable reaching out to us early on, even at the investigation stages. It's always better to talk earlier than later. Here's a chart of our current FMD JIC. You can see USDA Office of Communications is at the top. We take our direction strongly from them, and as Ed mentioned, from the Secretary himself. We also work directly with the Incident Command Group here at APHIS. Ed is our lead PIO, and our JIC manager is my boss, Lindsay Cole. Many of you may be familiar with her. She's been with APHIS for a number of years, but what was with the state of Wyoming prior to this position. And under Lindsay, we have 3 assistant PIOs, myself, and I work with media and social media. We have Donna Carlson, who works on publications outreach and works directly with the deployed PIOs. And then for wildlife issues, we have one of our wildlife services public affairs specialist, Gail Kern. Now you'll see the dashed line off to the side. We have a couple of folks who are also in LPA that are not technically part of the true JIC, but we refer to them and work with them very closely. Our state and stakeholder liaison, Hallie Zimmer, our congressional staff, Chris Needham and Tanika Whittington, the director of the correspondence group, Christina Myers, and our internal communication specialist, Megan Klingel. So if your state requests a USDA IMT with a PIO, the IMT PIO will work directly with the state PIO, and then will also coordinate with us here at the JIC. But if your state does not request our PIO, the state PIO will work directly with the JIC. And the JIC will be reaching out to the appropriate contacts within state and industry to coordinate messaging. Here's what I know a lot of you came here to listen to. What is the policy? And as Ed mentioned, these are departmental policies, not APHIS policies. So USDA must make the initial announcement of FMD in each state. And we will not announce any cases until the results are confirmed by FADL. States and other groups may not put out any sort of announcement until after the USDA announcement is posted. This is very important for everyone to understand. The announcement policy is not arbitrary. There are specific things we have to do internally before we can post a public announcement. These may not happen as quickly as everyone would like, ourselves included, but we work to put out this announcement as soon as we can. As soon as there is that presumptive positive, public affairs will be reaching out to the lead PIO in the affected state to begin coordinating messaging and talk timing. But it's not just the public affairs folks who have a say in the timing of an announcement. Again, that departmental leadership will weigh in, and their input carries the most weight. And let's consider one more thing, the trade perspective. We all know that FMD will have a major trade impact, but we still need to preserve our relationships with key trading partners. We don't want them to be surprised by a report in the press. They count on us to notify them just before an announcement is made. Some notifications, to Canada and Mexico specifically, are made by phone calls at the BS Deputy Administrator level. Other notifications are made by email. We also have to have our OIE notification in the works before any public announcement is made. As you can see, there are a lot of moving pieces to coordinate before we can post that press release and start talking with the media. And I know the question's out there, even though it hasn't been asked yet. So what can you say until that announcement is made? Well, we don't want to drive the rumor mill and negatively affect trade or industry, which can and does happen. There was a rumor about FMD in Kansas in 2002, and it's estimated by one report to have cost $50 million for a rumor. Let's avoid that. So until the first FMD confirmation is announced, the best bet, if asked, is for the PIO or key spokesperson to simply confirm a foreign animal disease investigation is in progress and that we can provide more information after we have the test results. We do hundreds of FAD investigations every year, and many are negative. We don't discuss them until we have results. After the first confirmed case of FMD, if there are additional investigations, we can more readily talk about the fact that investigations are ongoing, but the state PIO needs to work closely with the JIC before releasing anything, even about investigations at that point. For subsequent cases in the state can announce the cases at a presumptive positive level if they desire. This is similar to the policy we had for high-path avian influenza. Not all states may choose to do so, and that's up to them. But we will only be posting new cases once a day on the website and only after they are confirmed. Let's talk a little bit about perception. We discussed it earlier. Perception equals reality. Our trading partners' perceptions are very important, and we need to be consistent in how we announce cases and how we talk about them. This helps make us look like we're on top of the situation, and that's really important to our trading partners, even if trade is shut down. So let's put all of this together. Don't put out any information that you're not 100% certain of. Remember, we don't speculate. Wait for confirmation if there's even the slightest sliver of doubt. Details really do matter. And the littlest things can affect trade. For example, how things are characterized. Our trade staff here at APHIS is more than happy to review materials, whether they're ours or yours, and messaging to ensure that they are not extra inflammatory. And our partners will find any media reference, no matter how small the newspaper or the TV station. So please, for everyone's sake, coordinate with the JIC and the PIOs. That's what we're here for. And our last slide, the elephant in the room, good old trusty social media. That's a whole other world of perception, and it's here to stay whether we like it or not. It can be a powerful force for good or bad. Because this is an exercise, we'll be using SIMDEC to simulate the internet and social media postings. Each participating group designated a core team of individuals who will have read and write access on SIMDEC. Others from each group may have read-only access. If you're one of those people with read-only access, you will be able to see the interactions on SIMDEC as they occur. There's a simulated internet, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and blogs. The simulation cell will be playing as the public and responding and talking over social media. For this exercise, we will apply our normal policies to SIMDEC activities. We will only provide basic level information and important updates on social media. And USDA employees on the line, please take note. As always, social media needs to work through public affairs on the JIC. Only cleared messages will be sent out. And as mentioned on the Representing APHIS internal fact sheet we mentioned earlier, do not include any details about the incident on your personal social media accounts, USDA employees. If you're with state or industry, you probably have your own rules for social media. And again, consult with your PIO or leadership for your agency or group's social media plans and guidelines. And I know from past experience that some states do opt for a more robust social media response than we do, and that is great, and we will gladly support and work with the folks at the PIO level doing that social media. Those are all the slides I have, but I know there are more questions out there. So if you have questions, I think we are ready to open up the floor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as we move to Q&A, please feel free to place yourself into the question queue by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad. You'll hear a notification when your line is unmuted. At that time, please state your name and question. To send a written question, select all panelists on the Send To drop-down menu of the chat panel located on the lower right-hand side of your screen. And it does look like we have a few callers in the verbal queue. So I'll go ahead and go to the first caller. Your line is unmuted.
Sure. Hey, good morning. This is Dustin Odekoven in South Dakota. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, Dustin.
Hi. Yeah, the question I have I guess I'm thinking about how the results get relayed, from FADL to federal and state authorities, and then, and I certainly appreciate that USDA will make that announcement. At what point does the owner become notified of the results? I'm envisioning a social media post from from someone who gets that information before the announcement goes out. So how does that work?
Yeah, this is Ed. And I'm going to invite one of our veterinary services folks to talk about that process. So, and just comment that the intent and the idea would be that no owner finds out about test results on their animal via social media or any other way other than directly from a state or federal official in a due process that has them know before the public at large. But is there anyone else that wants to comment?
Well, Ed, I'm sorry, this is Dustin. I should clarify my question a little bit. My thought was, okay, so we get the results back, and the owner is notified by state or federal officials of the positive result. Is that prior to the announcement that goes out from USDA? And if yeah, I guess that's my first question. Are we letting the owners know about the test results before USDA makes the public announcement?
Well, if that's the index case in that state, then my thinking is that it's going to be close to simultaneous, but with due respect to the owner of the animals, and those animals will have been put under a stop order and would have been under investigation for a bit of time before the final result. But again, that's something that our veterinary officials really are involved heavily in, that sort of notification process. And if anyone wants to chime in on that, feel free. Well, there you go.
Yeah, that's okay. I think you've answered my question, and I appreciate that. I guess just in dealing with some, less serious diseases in our state, certainly not foot-and-mouth disease, but as we're investigating tuberculosis or trichomoniasis or other, even avian influenza when that happened, I guess what we found was in some cases owners of animals, when they get those test results, might make information available to industry groups or other people who they trust, and then that information goes out, more quickly than we were ready for that information to be released to the public. So, but you answered the question. I think, as simultaneously as we can make that announcement and the test results available, then it probably works out as well as it can. So, thank you.
No, thank you. I'm actually very familiar with the scenario you just outlined with results or information getting out there ahead of time through some communication between owners and stakeholders or their neighbors or something like that. With the consequences at stake with FMD, I think folks will be considering that heavily when making test result public. So.
Okay, and we can go ahead and take the next question. So, caller, your line is unmuted.
Good morning. This is Dr. Nick Striegel from the Colorado Department of Ag, and our question is, in a situation where there has been a confirmed positive in another state, and we find out in Colorado that, let's say the next day, or maybe even later that same day, that we have a premises with suspicious clinical signs of FMD, and we send someone out to investigate. We split samples, and part of the samples go to CSU, to the Nuln lab, and then the samples go out to Plum Island. We get a presumptive positive quicker than from Plum Island. We're going to act on that presumptive positive, and it makes it a little bit tricky as far as the mandate from USDA is not announcing any positive in the state, the index case in the state until USDA releases. At the point that we're responding to a presumptive positive, we'll need to institute livestock movement controls in a permitting process, and there has to be justification for doing that. And so what are your thoughts on that scenario or in that situation that could easily happen?
Yeah, that's probably going to happen. So in that situation, we have statements that we've used in the past when we need them to indicate that there's a situation under investigation. I mean, we do hundreds of investigations a year now. So the key there would be close communication with your communications folks in Colorado to get a statement out. And it very well may be something that comes from the state or the Fed or jointly, but we do recognize that there may be the necessity of putting information out about an ongoing investigation before there's confirmed results because of the stop movement orders or neighbors noticing or just people at large noticing something happening. But so in the case where we have to say something about a presumptive positive, we have a statement of sorts, a media statement, something we put out publicly that says that we're looking into a situation in X state and taking appropriate actions until we can get a confirmed result. And we would, again, coordinate extremely closely with state officials on that.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and those are all of the verbal questions that we have at this time. As a reminder, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad if you do have a verbal question. I do believe, do we have some written questions in the chat there?
We do. So the first one is, can you define ARMAR?
ARMAR stands for Agriculture, Response Management, and Resources.
The next one is, what measures are in place to prevent the owner of a positive case from turning to social media with the results prior to official announcement, assuming they are first in the state?
Handcuffs and blinders? No, I'm not aware of anything that could prevent that, frankly.
We had another statement. Sharon Fisher is on the line, and she said that she's going to take Dustin's question to John and Brian and work with LPA/state to coordinate owner notification.
That's great. Now I don't have to do that, so thank you, Sharon.
Okay, and I'm currently not seeing any further questions in the queue at the moment. Again, as a reminder, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad to ask a verbal question, or you can send a written question by selecting all panelists on the Send To drop-down menu of the chat panel.
We do have another written question. The USDA policy is that the state must not put out a statement before the official USDA announcement. There are government or other state elected officials who may not honor your policy. What are the ramifications if this policy is not observed?
You get a stern talking to. I can tell you that the ramifications for the United States and livestock exports are pretty heavy for not following the policy. But as far as some penalty or something like that, Joelle, are you aware of anything?
I am not, but their relationship with Secretary Perdue or others may suffer as a result.
Well, and so the idea is that the federal government is going to be, and state governments are going to be coordinating very closely. We'll be partnering, we'll be collaborating, we'll be talking about things, we'll be sharing information, and we'll be talking about, why things are done a certain way, or why we should hold off putting something out, or why we should put something out at a certain time. And we're hopeful that through close collaboration we can avoid that, but certainly understand that it could happen, and we'll just have to work through it. But
the next question is, during the FMV exercise, how will PIOs from unaffected states communicate with the JIC?
You can contact us, you can call us, you can email us. We'd be happy to hear from you. That's what we're there for.
Yeah, also, we did this during the high path situation as well a couple of times. Most of the ag PIOs belong to an organization, a sub-organization of NASDA called COSDA, Communication Officers of the State Departments of Agriculture, and we would have regular meetings with that group. That's representatives from every state livestock board or Department of Agriculture, or most states, if not every state. It's a group of PIOs and information folks that get together and talk about the issues. So we would definitely be engaging through that group as well.
And I'll go ahead and came in. Oh, go ahead.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
I'm going to address the last question on the follow-up, asking for contact information, and I will go ahead and give you guys my email and phone number, and I can direct anything that comes out to the other members of the JIC. My phone number is 301-851-4040, and my email is Joelle, Joelle, .r.Hayden, Hayden, @aphis.usda.gov.
Yeah, thanks, Joelle, and probably, yeah, I took that question a certain way. There's states that are not participating in ARMAR can call us at any time, and during a real FMD situation, we'll be working through COSDA anyway. So.
We have another question. Joelle, they're asking if you can address photography briefly during a response.
Sure, and this is where that internal fact sheet comes into play again. If you guys haven't taken a look at it, I would recommend doing so, but there is a point at least for USDA employees, and we want you guys to know that you should not do not take photographs or video of the response on any device unless you are specifically requested to do so as part of the incident response by your supervisor or by the incident PIO. And we do have actual policies that we can share in more detail if you have questions, come to me directly. But the fact is, anything that's taken on government time can be considered a record and could be FOIA'd, and we just want to avoid that. If there's a need to document something with photo or video evidence, then that request needs to come from the supervisory levels within the incident management team or from the PIO if we need to take it for use in B-roll or other media response. And those videos or photos should be taken with official government equipment, not your personal phone.
Right now we don't have any other written questions. Are there any other verbal questions in the queue?
I'm seeing no further questions in the verbal question queue.
Well, if a question comes up, again, you have my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me directly. I can work with Ed, Lindsay, Donna, and all the others to address any questions that you guys have. And we do look forward to working with all of you guys on the exercise and in any other communications needs that might come up.
Okay, well, I'd also like to thank Joelle and Ed for taking time to do this great webinar today. And I just wanted to let you all know who was on the line, that we do have another webinar this afternoon at 1 o'clock with Lisa Brown and Dr. Fred Bourgeois on the National Veterinary Stockpile Countermeasures Resource Ordering. There will be additional webinars during the month of April supporting the ARMAR exercise, so please watch your email for those announcements. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a great afternoon. And thanks again, Joelle and Ed.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining today's conference. The session has now concluded, and you may disconnect.